Good morning. Happy Thursday. I'll give you guys just a couple minutes to join me live. If you are joining me live, you know the drill. Let me know in the comments. Hashtag replay if you're watching the replay. So it's been a while since I felt a lot of energy in my body that could be used for teaching publicly. And I'm really excited about it, actually. I'm really excited about this particular conversation. And so I just want to feel into what's the greatest way to start this. So one of the things that I've often said throughout my life was that I'm a scenic route person. I love to take long drives. I love to navigate things without maps. If you've been following me for a while, you saw that in 2017 I did a across the US road trip so I could finish seeing all 50 states, and I did that with a paper map. And the only reason why I had the paper map was so that after I got to a new city, I could actually draw the route that I ended up taking. Because I followed signs, I let myself get lost. And so I still have the map too, with a gold Sharpie to note the whole route that I took and whatnot. But this is something that's always very consistent, and my whole life was mostly road trips, right? So my family, my grandparents lived in Vancouver and we lived in northern BC, and so there would be like an 8-hour to 12-hour road trip nearly every holiday. And so one of the things that for me in particular has always been important is that is a standard that's maintained for me, is that I get to go on road trips and I get to go explore and navigate. And then for a period of time, I stopped doing that. I stopped road tripping. I stopped going out to explore without maps. I stopped just letting myself take the scenic route through anything. And I mean that beyond driving, right? So I started taking shortcuts. I started listening to the indoctrination from what the outside world was telling me about how our time is meant to be used and how our time ought to be used. And so, there was a period of time where I was in the startup space, and time was always a conversation. It was, how can we optimize time? How can we save time? How can we leverage time? And that's really what my entire life became dedicated to during that phase. I automated myself in my job because that was encouraged. It was encouraged to, how can you save more time? And I gotta say, there is no quicker way to burn out than to be thinking that you need to save time. Because the way that we were relating to time, and how most of us do relate to time, is the same way that we relate to ourselves. That if we are not productive, we are not useful. If we are not productive, we are not valuable. If we are not productive, we are not worthy. And so what we've done is we've taken that same system, that same misogynistic, patriarchal, whatever word you want to use to describe it, system, and applied it to an entity, time. And I do mean entity of time because, see, time, yes, it is a concept. And meanwhile, so many people are willing to say, oh, but time, it's made up stuff. Time isn't real. And to which I'm going to reply, you're wrong, because time is very real. The measurement of time is made up. The measurement of time is bullshit. But time itself is so real that by the time you've started watching this and the time you will end it, minutes will have passed. And you may leave this conversation feeling like, oh my God, I just wasted 10 minutes of my life, or oh my God, I just wasted so much time of my life trying to optimize it. See, time itself, just in the last minute, has passed. You're never going to get that time back. That's the fundamental nature of what scarcity was actually meant to point to. Not scarcity of, I need to make the most out of this minute. Scarcity would just be like, dude, honor the fucking minute. Respect the minute. But you don't need to cram so much into it. And so because we've applied the application of productivity to time, we've also applied what the fundamental rule of productivity is that it must be tangible. There must be a tangible result. And so our entire lives are based on that. We don't think we're productive unless there's a tangible result. Oh my God, I didn't do my laundry. I didn't do my dishes. I didn't do this. Or I did do my laundry. I did do my dishes. Therefore, I'm productive. I'm valuable. I'm A-okay. And so our time becomes the same way. Our time becomes this thing of like, we have to be using it to create something tangible. And so the idea of using our time to create peace is unacceptable. The idea of using our time to create beauty, radiance, calm, harmony is unacceptable because in our personal lives, we have not allowed productivity to not exist. Productivity is the production of something tangible. Radiance, beauty, harmony, peace are not tangible things. Like doing your dishes, creating a YouTube channel, milling lumber. They're not the same thing. And so what ends up happening is that we create these systems of interacting with time so that we can be less intimate with it. And I use the word intimacy of time very deliberately here because time is not a measurement. The measurement of time is made up. Time is very real because it is a sensual experience. And I'm directly quoting that from Maceo Paisley, who I had the pleasure of listening to last night. And I just felt so real because it's something I've known, but I just really haven't put the two words together. And I mean, I say the relationship to time often, but the sensuality of time. We all have a sense of time, right? You have a sense of when time passes. You have a sense of how long a minute is. And that sense of time, that sensuality with time, may or may not be calibrated to the same measurement of time, okay? But you have a sense of it. It is a sensual experience. And so because we've made time a need to be productive, efficient, optimized, we've removed the sensuality. We have stripped it of the intimacy. And now people don't have a concept of time inside their body. We have to rely on a calendar to know what time it is. We have to rely on alarm clocks to wake up. Our internal clocks are completely dysregulated and totally uncalibrated to living life. That everything we do thereout becomes outsourced to somebody else, to something else other than who we are and what we want to be doing with our lives. And really, it comes down to your particular relationship to time. And I'm not going to use words like you're like having a clean relationship to time. That's like assuming that there is cleanliness to any relationship. All relationships are dirty. But I want to say, is it healthy? Do you feel like you have a healthy relationship to time in the way that you value time? Because for me, when I was in the startup space, optimizing my time, leveraging my time, needing to save my time, it wasn't healthy. Because every waking moment of the day had to be about production, about creating something tangible that I could show somebody else. So the idea of rest was unproductive. The idea of just sitting and watching TV, unproductive. Calm, meditation, if it was meditation, it could be productive. But it was still this weird interaction with it. And so it was unhealthy. It was an unhealthy relationship to time. But because I had an unhealthy relationship to time, I also calibrated my sense of time to others who also had an unhealthy sense of time. Okay? And so part of my process in the last year or so, and it's been coming more and more in my face, and there's more stuff to come on this, but I've started to realize that what has always been true about me is stuff that I've had to smother and put away and shove down and ignore because I was calibrating to other unhealthy relationships to time instead of reinforcing the relationship I always had, which was I like to take the scenic route. I like things to take a while. I like things drawn out so I could feel everything. So I could look at the trees along the highway, so I could take in the flowers, so I could watch the bees, so I can see the birds fight in their nests, so I could really take in life. And taking in life is a product of scenic living. It's a scenic state of mind. If you are constantly taking the highways, you are never going to experience the scenic routes. And part of me felt a lot of shame about wanting to take the long way because we live in a society that's like, no, you got to get there fast. You've got to get there now. You have to be optimized. You have to be on it all the time. And I'm like, sometimes I just want to fuck around. Can we fuck around? Can we just fuck around and find out about life? And there's this sense of like shame because it was like I was constantly calibrating to all of these unhealthy relationships to time, and then feeling really disgusted with my own because my own relationship to time was not like theirs. So I shoved my relationship to time down, my intimacy with time down, and wanted to get more done in a minute, more done in an hour, more productive, more production, tangible physical results all the time. And it deeply burnt me out. And so this morning I was really sitting with like, well, what is the scenic root state of mind? Like the scenic way of living. What is that? Because this is a thread that's actually carried through a lot of my work too. My first program was called Stay, and it was staying your course. And it was like using driving as a metaphor. And really that's what that was, is you need to take the scenic route in life. But I didn't have the skill to talk about it then. And I don't know if I do now, to be honest, but I'm working on it. And so when I sit with it, it's about understanding my values and how I want to keep my relationship to time. And if I want my relationship to time to be healthy for both of us, for me and time, the entity of time. And ciao Enza. Mwah. My relationship to time, I want it to be fluid. I want it to be nourishing. I want it to be beautiful. I want the life of, dolce far niente, like the sweetness of doing nothing. That's what I want in my life. And so when I ignore what I want in my life, of course I'm going to take the highway because, listen, you're going to get there 2 hours sooner. But I'll miss out on the glacier lakes. I'll miss out on the trees. I will miss out on that beautiful ma and pa shop. I'll miss out on so much if I'm only thinking about how fast I'll get there, on how I should be somewhere else, and how long I've been driving already. Now, one of the things that I should have recognized in this moment was that a couple years ago, I was on a road trip with a potential partner, not a partner now, but potential partner. And he said something to me that should have tipped me off that we were not a match. We weren't. And it was, we were driving, and as we were, he got irritated and he was getting frustrated. And he's like, this drive is taking forever. And I've always been stunned when people say that, because for me, we get there when we get there. It's taking forever. We get there when we get there. If we ever get there. And one of the things that was really hard for me was accepting that his valuation and his relationship to time did not match my relationship to time. That his expectation of how a minute goes did not match how my desire for my minutes to pass. There was a complete values misalignment. And this was probably one of the first times I became aware of like the sensuality of time being so different between me and another person. Because before, I was so quick to abandon my intimacy with time to try to make it like everybody else's, make it more productive, optimized, saved. And then now I was like, wait a minute, I don't want to relate that way. I don't want to engage with time in that fashion. And so I just started to slow down a little bit and be a little bit more cautious. Now, I don't mean cautious. That's not the word. I just mean more deliberate. And so since then, I've just started to pick up on different cues of how people have unhealthy relationships to time. And I do mean, again, unhealthy, because it's not a relationship to time. It's a relationship to whether or not it's productive, whether or not it matches a timeline, a measurement of time. You guys might have seen, like a while ago, I did a little bit of an Instagram story about this tweet that I saw that just irritated me, because it was this man saying, he asked his father, like, oh, what are you doing for your anniversary, to his dad? And his dad was like, when you've been married for 40 years, you don't do anything. And when he asked his mom, she was like, oh, I'm hoping he does something sweet. Complete different concepts of time, completely different relationships to time, completely different intimacies of time, because the husband was using time as a scapegoat. Now this, if you've never done this to me, I can guarantee you I have had rage fits about your existence and your relationship to time after you've said this. But I've known you for X amount of years, so I get to do this. Or I've known you for X amount of years, so I don't have to do that. Excuse me? Excuse me? No. Your relationship to time is not my business. Your business and my business is our relationship to each other. Time is an intimate concept. Time is a personal relationship. And so you can't use your disregard for time as your excuse of how you relate to me. Such is so, I can't use my intimacy with time as an excuse for how I relate to you. Case in point here. If I know that my intimacy with time is that it's slow, it is a long haul drive, we're going to take the scenic route, it's going to take the long way, we're going to take pit stops, then I don't get to assume that you are the same as me. I don't get to assume that you also want to do those things. I don't know what your relationship to time is. And so if I'm in relationship to you and I care about you and I have respect for you as a person, I'm going to check in there. And I'm going to see, hey, this is how I want to experience this road trip, this experience of life together. Are you aligned? This is the key. Are you aligned? Because had I taken this concept into my startup life, I would have been like, I want to experience my day fluidly and I want to experience my day in flow, but I also want to know that I'm making progress, not production. It's not about how much I get done in a day. It's the quality of what I get done in a day. Then I probably would have looked around at that job and been like, this isn't a value fit for me. And I would have left and found one that was. Same thing with the guy that I did that road trip with. I want to experience this road trip as like, we're on vacation. We are going to go where it's going to take us however long it takes us. What is his relationship with the time? And I would have learned that he needs to get there quickly. He's anxious. He needs to, make sure that everything is rolling and productive. Then I would have been like, you know what? The experience that you want and the experience that I want are values unaligned. It's very crazy to approach it that way. That it's not about me applying my relationship to us. It is about me seeing my relationship to time and seeing if you mesh with that. Seeing if I mesh with yours. Because if they don't, then one of us is going to be resentful. One of us is going to be angry because we're going to miss out on something for us. Now, again, it comes back to this, my desire for the scenic route and why I think this is actually the superior path. Because it actually has nothing to do with the destination. And we say it a lot. It's all about the journey, not the destination. But I actually don't think most of the people that say that believe that. Because they're still using things like, well, I've been on this path forever and I should be further along. Or you've been here forever and this is how the experience should go. And there's still this like external system that is determining the quality of which you live your life. The scenic route is like, I don't care if things take a while. I don't care if it takes me 12 hours to drive to Vancouver when it takes somebody else 8. I don't care if I have to pull over and have a nap. I don't care if I've got to stop over and have food. But I also don't care that when I want to stop and have food at this beautiful mom and pop restaurant, that's not going to be a problem. That when I desire something, that it's not going to take away from my life. It's just adding more to it. And I think that is really the nature of what the scenic route is it doesn't matter how long something takes. It's what are you doing along the way? What are you getting to experience? What are you navigating? What are you moving through? And because our relationship to time is so fucked up as a society, it's hard to advocate for that because the moment that I even say that, someone's going to like reply and be like, well, not all of us have the privilege of taking the scenic route. Yeah. And here's the thing. It's because you don't value the scenic route. That's why you don't take it. See, I value the scenic route. So I am willing to walk away from relationships that won't allow it. Now, I wasn't always this way, let's be fair. But now I'm willing to walk away from jobs that don't accept it. And that's why I became self-employed. I'm willing to walk away from friendships, relationships, family members, jobs, living situations that don't allow me to have the scenic route because I value that. I value that above all else. I value being able to make cookies with no recipe far more than I value a drive-through coffee. I value being able to do certain things in my life more than the convenience of highway living, the convenience of how streamlined life could be. It doesn't matter if it's streamlined. Yeah, I could go buy cookies, but have you made cookies before? It's so much fucking fun. The scenic route is tangential with slow living. And slow living is a complete recalibration of time. Slow living is not living to beat the clock, because the clock is made up. The measurement of time is made up. Slow living is about calibrating to your own clock, to time, like your own relationship to time, the passing of moments. How do you want to experience this passing moment? Not, can we make the most of this passing moment? It's, how do I get to experience this? Listen, now, the things that interest me most are things like slow cities. I love the concept of slow cities because in my heart, that's what I want. Slow cities are ones where it's local first. So a lot of local shops, so mom and pop shops, bakeries, fisheries, butchers, etc. Locally owned. Very little use of vehicles in the city centers. Emphasis on like eating, digesting, resting, right? So when I was in Europe, one of my favorite things, which I loved, but it was, again, a beginning calibrating process, was that you don't take coffees to go. Like, it's not a thing. And this was like, I loved it, but it was also not a habit for me yet to not take a coffee to go. And so, slow living, scenic state of mind is the same. It's how much life do I get to live in alignment with my values, not how much life do I need to fit into the system. Because part of the issue that I see is a lot of people, we want to fight the system, but we're not willing to stand up for the things that we value. The only way to fight the system is to opt out of sacrificing yourself for it. So if you are sacrificing yourself for time, then you have to look at what values am I dismissing to meet this systemic issue? How am I feeding the system by abandoning me? And listen, this is like a nuanced conversation that takes a lot deeper dives, and you can come do bank or you can come do enchantment, whatever vibe, because this is going to be vibrating into both containers for me. But that choice of how do you actually want to live your life begins to shift what you allow and what you tolerate and what you accept and what you invite. And it's not about like, well, I don't want to experience turmoil. It's like, well, how do you experience turmoil? Because that's fundamental nature to life. Well, I don't want to experience death. Well, you can't. So how do you want to move through it? And that's one of the things that even for me, with my grandparents, both of them passing on my mom's side, that was a clear relationship to time as well. Because when they passed, there was no resentment, no regret on my end. None. And the reason for it was because I knew that their death was inevitable. That was something I couldn't control or avoid. And so therefore I chose, how do I want to relate to them? Given my relationship to time, which was slow, intimate, sweet, tender. That's my relationship to time. And I said, okay, well, that's my relationship to time. What works for them? And so that's what I did with my grandparents. And they accepted it, and it meshed, and it worked. Now, the way that I was with my nona doesn't apply to everybody, but it worked for them, so it was perfect. And so when they passed, I knew that I loved them to my fullest without sacrificing a value of mine for it. Right? And so, death is a really good way to experience time differently. It's like, well, how do you experience death? Are you upset? Are you angry? Are you resentful? Or are you knowing that you actually chose to live in full alignment and values, your internal value system, and just had that be out in the world? And pick and chose who got to experience that with you, because it doesn't always match, right? Like, so with my old coworkers, the intimacy I had with my grandparents was not going to match with them, because the telling jokes, listening to my grandparents tell stories in broken English was too slow. It wasn't a fast process. It took forever for them to tell a story. But I was okay with that. I was okay with spending that time, because my concept of time, my relationship to time, was so sensual. It was so internal. It was so embodied that there was no way I could misallocate my time. There was no way I could misallocate my energy in that relationship. So basically, the scenic route is just a values-based route. What do you want to see? How do you want to see it? What is inevitable is that eventually you will get there. And what's inevitable is you'll have to fill up your tank. What's inevitable is that you'll have to wash your windshield. What's inevitable, you'll have to have bio brakes. So how do you want to experience all of the things that you will never be able to control? instead of taking away from your life to have pseudo control over them, right? So part of taking the highway is so that you don't have to fill up your tank as often. Part of taking the highway is so that you get there fast, spending less time. Part of the highway is that, you know, because you're spending less time on the road, you won't have as many bio breaks. So it is a pseudo form of control, instead of, I'm not going to control those things anyways, but I'm going to be able to experience more, even in this slowness, even in this deliberacy of taking the scenic route. Because yeah, like we our unhealthy relationships to time is an intimate thing. It's personal, but we use it and we apply it to other people. And so what happens is we have this, again, this systemic issue with time, that time must be productive, must produce a tangible physical thing, have a result of some kind. And because we've internalized that system, we apply it to everybody else and assume that their relationship to time matches that. Now, listen, if you have a exploitive, extractive relationship to time and you're surrounded by other people who are like that, it'll work for you. But for me, because I started valuing my own relationship to time more, it no longer works for me to interact with people who have an exploitive relationship to time, a scapegoating relationship to time, a destructive relationship to time. It doesn't work for me. And so for, again, like even my parents, it's like, oh, well, the way that you were when you were a kid. I'm like, nope, I'm not the same person I was when I was 7. You don't get to use that anymore. But you used to like this when you were little. Talking about different foods. Nope, I'm not that person anymore. You got to ask me who I am now, because that's what's important to me, right? So anyways, I'm rambling now. If this is something you want to explore in your life, if you're like, you know what, I can feel some resonance of like, how do I want to navigate? Maybe you don't want to take the scenic route, but you want to be able to begin taking detours. Either way, if you feel that inside of you in this conversation, there's something that's opening, send me a message. I'd love to talk to you and see what path of us working together works for you in your particular journey, because some of you are going to want to learn the scenic route around money and time and energy, and understand that you can't just be transitioning your time for money. And then others are going to be like, you know what? I want to stop extracting from myself. I want to stop pulling from my energy, and I want to start living more magically and more in my own body and more in my own life. Then enchantment might be for you. Or you might be a combination of both and you're like, Steph, I just need some focus time, and you want to come into my one-on-one. That's cool too. Either way, just send me a message and let's just start the conversation. The scenic route is very important to me, because even in the spiritual path, there is these insidious ways of feeling like time still needs to be productive. And so we really have to break apart from that system, pull apart this idea that we need to be productive and useful, and understand that time can actually be used to create something that's not tangible. Experiences, sensuality, intimacy. Those aren't tangible things. They're not results. They're experiences. So I'm going to let you guys go. Let me know in the comments what you've left here with, and I look forward to hearing more from you. Mwah. Bye.